Hello and welcome to the Alchemist Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
Hi, I'm Emily, and my tech has been stupid today. So just going to preface this up front. If the tech continues to be stupid, that's what's going on.
I am KristaLyn, and my tech has been stable. My mentality, maybe not.
Fair.
Yeah.
So fair. We were just spending a good amount of time talking about how everything feels like jello right now. Like everything
Mhm.
is so wiggly and nothing is stable and everything just feels in the energy wise like
Yeah.
and it's hard to see what to even look at to go
Yeah.
like to understand to get information right now. It's just so much information and all of it's like, how does that work? I don't know. How about that thing? I don't know. So much.
Yeah.
So
It's like
much.
we're trying to plant seeds, right? Because we're trying to figure out what's going to work and what's going to grow and that kind of stuff. But it's like planting seeds in a deluge of water where it's like, is that even going to be able to grow or is it just going to get washed away? Will I just never know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's very weird right now. I have started the Aries ingress prediction stuff for March in 2025, just because I'm like, I need to know. I need to feel more grounded in future stuff, and at least the astrology doesn't change, even if the energy feels weird. Um,
Yeah.
so I've been getting into that. I've set up basically a template for myself. The template itself is about 10 pages. It's going to be a very detailed report with pictures, aka charts. I will be sharing that on my Patreon too. But just know I'm working on it and I will have information as soon as I can. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I was debating for future prediction stuff for the year. Like, how do I want to actually present that? I might do a YouTube,
Mhm.
maybe. Um, I might do a TikTok that gets posted at other places like Reels, etc. Maybe, or
Mhm.
I might just like casually just drop little bits and pieces here and there and figure it out as we go. I'm
Mhm.
not sure yet. The commitment goes day by day.
Yeah. I was actually surprised with how wonky the future feels to look at the
Hmm.
chart and see a fixed sign rising for the Aries ingress, which means like one theme consistent through the
Yeah.
year. And I was like, what? I really expected a well, I think it was cardinal sign where it would be different. You'd have to look at every solstice and equinox for what was going on for that changeability.
Yeah.
But no,
How
no impact.
interesting.
Yeah.
Really hope the theme is very Can You Hear the People Sing? That would be
Uh,
super fantastic.
it's an Aquarius rising chart. Um, I've got some candidates for the ruler of the year that I need to run by my mentor when they are back from their honeymoon. Um, but yeah, there are two candidates on there. And I'm like, one of these bodes well. Two of them bode well. One of these, I'm not sure. So I need to make sure because there are so many criteria that go into choosing the
Mhm.
Lord of the Year. It helps to just talk about it out loud and compare notes with someone else's opinions. Um, but I think I got it. And it's not what we expected at first glance. So,
Interesting.
hmm
I think that might be the theme of the year going forward in general, is not what we expected at first glance.
yeah.
That is a perfect theme, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down and we're gonna
Yeah. I
circle
will
back to
be.
that in next year's year in review.
Yeah, we will. I actually was preparing my sort of important astrological dates and ingresses and retrogrades and whatever for 2025, and it has the chart may be fixed rising, but the year has all of the outer planets making moves into other signs, whether they stay there or not. Um, Aside from Pluto, of course, who has already gotten into Aquarius and will be spending that early time in
Mhm,
Aquarius all year,
mhm,
which is the rising sign of the year. So if you want to take that into account, even though the ancients wouldn't have because they couldn't see Pluto. But yeah, so all of the outer planets are making moves this year and next year. So it's a very like, I think we're holding on tight is the theme as the winds. It's kind of like Dorothy, in the
yeah,
house. And we are just
yeah,
waiting to see where it lands us.
fair.
Hmm
It's a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Well, let's look back in time then, because forward in
Nice.
time is weird
Because
and
we at
wiggly
least know what
jello,
happened then.
right? So we're gonna do a year in review for this podcast episode.
Mhm.
Just talk about it's like your Spotify Wrapped for spiritual stuff that happened this year. That's what we're
Mhm.
going for. Because it's been a very interesting year. Do you want to start by talking maybe about some of our key points of astrology from this past year that were
Mhm.
noticeable, if you
Yeah,
have
so some
them
of
on deck?
the biggest things in astrology
Hmm.
have been that Saturn and Jupiter have been in a square, kind of in that dance this whole year, really opening up the story that started in 2020 when they conjoined in
Hmm.
Aquarius. Not to be outdone, of course, is Pluto, who got in and out of Aquarius a couple times, but is now staying for the next 20 years. So we
Hmm.
have a lot of the, hey, don't forget you're starting a whole new 200-year era here. The 200-year era, of course, being the triplicity shift that Jupiter and Saturn brought in and the action going on around that. But then also Pluto saying, yeah, same, I agree, and I'm going to do this too. So that's 20 years, which is going to take us beyond the next conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. There's a lot of planets agreeing with each other in their individual cycles, which is unique. Um, Pluto being a big one, Jupiter and Saturn being a very big one. And then, of course, we had Mars retrograde, which we're in right now and goes through February. And
Hmm.
Venus will follow that up shortly after.
Yeah. There was some really interesting energy at the beginning of the year, though, too, with a lot of
Mhm.
the astrology stuff. Like we did have Pluto pop into Aquarius briefly and then retrograde back
Yeah.
out. And I
The
mean,
yeah, I totally forgot. Thank you for bringing it up. The solar eclipse in Aries, which is still the timing of that is still unfolding. We've entered into its beginning now, and
hmm.
it will flare up in actually October of 2026 as its pinnacle. So 2025 is going to continue building us up in that. But that had a comet with it and everything. So it was
Hmm.
kind of a big deal.
It had
Yeah.
oomph. It had
Yeah.
oomph for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, both eclipse seasons this past year were rough. They
Mhm.
were doozies.
We just learned not to try to run a conference during an eclipse. That was
Don't do it. Don't
mhm.
do it. We tried to be ballsy
We were like, we're high vibe. We'll make it work. We'll have the higher expression.
and
It is
we
corruption
did.
one way or another. We did. We made it work. It
Hmm.
was a lot. It was a
Yeah.
lot. It was chaotic, which is very eclipsy. But I do think
Yeah.
it did what it was going to do in the highest and best way possible.
Hmm.
I may
Yeah.
have a few more gray hairs.
It's very interesting. Like looking back the year, of like, okay, it was a very deep soul transformative year, I think, for a lot of people, but
Mhm.
not in the way that years previous have been, because our souls have just been in this weird like evolution shift thing since 2020, basically. Obviously, we always have changed and moved through things kind of before that too. Like, obviously, we're always kind of constantly evolving beings in a lot of ways, but it's been extra flavorful since
Mhm.
2020.
Spicy.
What's a good word there? It's been this core stuff. But this year has been a very it's been one of those years where people have shifted dynamically.
Mhm.
And I'd be willing to bet that if you look back on your life over the course of this year, you probably did that in some capacity as well. A dynamic pivot in some way, whether that's just in an internal self space of like, I want to go in this direction, or whether that's in like life, it gave you a pivot and you had to address it accordingly. It's just been a year of like big turn,
Mhm.
big shift, big doing this thing. Over the course of the year, it might not have felt as dynamic, but if you look back at who you were in this past January versus who you are now, it does feel like a lifetime lived. It feels like so much energy between then because it has been in a multitude of ways too. Like we've had to address a lot of things in the world this year that are things that should not happen, should
Mhm.
not be seen in the world. And I'm not saying when it comes to things like pandemics, right? When we had the 2020 pandemic, that's actually something that should, air quotes, happen because we exist
Mhm.
as people, right? Like that's just something that the mathematical likelihood is extremely high of that. And that is it's something that is hopefully preventable, but also just kind of like one of those this is what it is to live on planet and these tiny little germs are just as powerful as you are. Like check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? Like that is
Mhm.
it's one of those human inevitabilities that is kind of like what we accept. Like people are going to get sick. that's just a condition of this layer of the universe cake. But
Nature did that.
things like genocide and
Mhm.
fascism and all these things that we've had to contend with this year are not that. Those
Yeah.
are not things that need to happen. Those are not things that are part of the human condition. Those are not things that should be happening. Those are not mathematically statistical probability things in the way that a germ getting you is. And that has been like a rolling thing that we've had to continually contend with. Of course, we're over here not in Gaza and places like that, and that's amazing that we get to be here and get to help from this side. But it hasn't really changed there, but we're still contending with that and in a bunch of different layers and levels of our life and like a lot of like class consciousness. Just been a lot of stuff that hasn't been uh, on our radars in the same way until it has this year. And so there's, I think, a lot of that flow too of like we're changing and altering stuff. And then externally, we're having to confront a lot of things that are coming in and kind of shift from there as well. So all of those make for like a really interesting change on an individual level as a person throughout the course of a single year because it's just a lot of stuff to process,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, it's been we were talking, I did a live on TikTok this morning, and it was just like just how unprecedented is the new precedented. And
Yeah.
we are defining precedented for the next 200 years right now. So in order to define it, it all needs to be unprecedented. And that's frankly annoying. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
enough slices at this point. I think I would handle a little bit more of a calm situation for a little while. Like I'd get restless
Mm-hmm.
after a little bit. I do like a little adventure and spice in life. I just wish this didn't come with so many people having to suffer and be scared and feel so uncertain and targeted. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's not the kind of adventure I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just pulling back up my 2024 predictions that I made back in January.
Hmm.
We have a billionaire dethroned. Sorry, I don't think it was going to happen the way that it did, but
Hmm.
I am here for it. The mass reawakening, which is definitely happening on a huge
Yeah.
scale, especially in the last couple months, it's been a huge reawakening too. And like
Yeah.
when I say reawakening, I do mean people that have like either dabbled in this before and then took a break or
Hmm.
were really active in 2020 and then dropped off. Those types of things. That's the people I was specifically targeting with that. And I feel that that really did happen this year in a lot of ways. A lot of people
Yeah.
kind of reconnected and got more involved.
I think because they found a reason and
Hmm.
something that was worth protecting or worth advocating or whatever, they returned to like this is where I feel most powerful and like I have influence and I have sway and this is how I
Hmm.
can add my energy to something. And that's true for all of those people. Like, yes, good job. We're going to
Yeah.
be trying to offer more to help with that very, very soon.
Hmm. Yeah, we are definitely. And the other thing too is I think we are all feeling this just in the last week or two, even though there's so many things that are going on. It's like I'm gonna call it a nibble where it's like, oh, I need to do something new. I need to do something new
Hmm.
spiritually. I need to get back into this thing. I need to take a course or I need to do whatever. I told Krista I've amassed like 7 new books in the last like
Hmm.
week. And I'm like, well, this is something's coming up. Something is shifting because that's not
Hmm.
typical. And I mean like magic heavy, like nonfiction, like
Yeah.
grimoire-esque books. And I'm like, okay, I guess I've got to do new things now. So if you're
Yeah.
feeling that too, like, yeah, it's coming in. It's coming in. I also just want to say it's very interesting to look back at the year just on a very personal level for us and be like, okay, we did a Sacred Spaces in January,
Yeah.
um,
And then we did it
which
again.
was amazing and
Yeah.
powerful and so beautiful. It was such an incredible experience. And that caused a lot of evolution. And then we went to Egypt, and that shook up our whole ass world completely. Like, totally changed us as people,
Hmm.
as Egypt do. Any
Yeah.
of you who are coming with us to Egypt in a couple months, like, which is really close, by the way, but in a
I
couple
know.
months, yeah, it's gonna shake up your world in a really good way, really
Hmm.
good way.
Yeah,
And
it's like
then
literally 2 months. Wow.
yeah, hmm we're going to Egypt in 2 months.
Hmm.
Oh,
And we're spending 3 weeks there.
that's a lot. It's gonna be very interesting.
Hmm.
Very interesting. Um, and then we went to Italy, and that was an experience that occurred that we did do.
That, yes, it happened.
It happened. It was a real thing. And that was very interesting because that was also right around eclipse season. So there
Hmm.
was a lot of weird energy coming in with that too.
Hmm.
It was right after eclipse season, if I remember correctly.
About a month after. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were still adjusting, which is so fun. And then we went to Japan, which was amazing and beautiful and magical, and also, wow, talk about a
Yeah.
wormhole of an activation. It
Hmm.
was that indeed. And then we threw another Sacred Spaces. So like it's just been like a lot of event stuff. And we did actually channel at the beginning of this past year how much in-person events are going to be important. And we weren't even speaking to ours necessarily at the time, but I will say on a very personal level, not to mention like I had a with my Train With Me program, which are like my top level students of which by the way I will start if you want to do that. You're like, oh, Train With Me. It's basically a mentorship with me that's very in depth for like 4 months. I will be opening that up here very soon in the next like two-ish weeks for applications. So that's also coming in. I have something in my eye. Sorry, I'm just gonna hold my finger here for a second.
Hmm.
Ow. Um, Okay. But I will be opening that up in 2 to 3 weeks if that's something that sounds interesting to you. But, had a gathering with them. You and I have gotten together a whole bunch this year and, went out and Rebecca came here and I went and saw Rebecca and like
Hmm.
different things like that where it's like, oh yeah, like in-person community is going to continually become more and more important, I think, for our spiritual journeys. Like we're missing the vibes of the coven. And I think this year it really started to kind of bring those vibes back in. And I will say personally, like the amount of in-person connection that did happen was so vital to me in so many
Same.
ways.
Yeah,
I,
it's been what, it's been a month and a half, 2 months since our last
hmm
thing. And I realized I was getting irritated the other day of like how stagnant things felt. And I was like, you're going to Egypt in 2 months, but it's like, no, it's been time. And
hmm
I'm feeling that loss already of the connection.
Yeah,
So,
I feel that very
mhm.
deeply. And yeah, so that I think is something that we're just going to take forward going forward. But if this year was a year of feeling like you needed people,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
not, I mean, needed good people,
Mhm.
needed people you enjoy,
Yeah.
not
Needed
all
your
people.
people.
As
Yeah.
we learned at the beginning of November, there's a bunch of people that we don't want to connect with. And that's okay.
Honestly, I truly, every time I tune into the energy, the two things that remain totally like not wobbly at all to me when I look ahead is you got to focus on story,
Hmm
like the stories we share with each other, the stories we use to communicate, the stories we use as escape, but also your community. You
hmm
have to focus on your community. Surround yourself with the people you do want to be surrounded by. Have that tight-knit support because it's going to help you remember that there's good around you
hmm
as you are doing whatever you were supposed to do with all the other things that you don't agree with, whether that's, actively opposing it head on or whatever. Community is going to be
hmm
cozy. It's going to be really good. We're going to find so many solutions that are just like little loopholes. That's what it feels like, little haha loophole kind of things that I see
hmm
happening a lot, um, of just ways of like preserving our joy in that way.
Yeah.
And stories. I feel like stories are about to get really interesting.
hmm Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's going to be very important. I do think books are going to continue to have a moment too. Like they're already having one. We already know that reading has become, again, a very popular hobby, increasingly so
Hmm.
since 2020. And I think it's going to have an even further resurgence now, which is odd because I don't understand why, but it feels like there is, like
Yeah,
so it's important. Yeah.
yeah.
Other predictions that I had made, a big discovery in myth slash magical history. Um, and there has been
Hmm.
multiple, a whole plethora of those actually. Most recently, I very closely follow the work of, oh, her first name's Claudia. What's her last name? She's searching for Cleopatra.
Yeah,
She's like
yeah. I knew exactly who you meant.
fucking hair's breadth away from finding Cleopatra. I truly believe she finds her in 2020. I
Hmm.
deeply, or 2025. I
2025.
really do think that she does find her in
Hmm.
2025. Um, and that's a thing. Also, they have found 4 or 5 different settlements that predate what was known as settlement history
Hmm.
in this year. like including like walls underwater off of the coast of Spain that are like 10,000 years old, and they're like, oh, we didn't think humans were making walls then, so that is huge and super important. um so there's a huge element there, and that's not just archaeological, like, yes, archaeological discoveries speaking to that, but also that also confirms a lot of what we channel in and talk about
Mhm.
very often. So I consider that part of myth magical history. Plus, they've also, multiple different things have come out and been like, yeah, we fully actually proved parallel realities exist.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
which
the
we fucking told you so.
quantum computing. Have you
Hmm.
seen how I think Google made a quantum computer that solved a problem in 5 minutes that would have taken a supercomputer like a trillion years? I'm not
Yeah.
exaggerating.
Yeah.
And they were like, the only way they can currently explain is that it was pulling from other universes to get the solution and like literally
Hmm.
just breaking time and pulling things.
Yeah.
That was a
That's
whole article in a newsletter I get that's actual rational news.
Yeah, no, that's actual rational news. It's a whole
Mhm.
article. You can look it up. The computer's name is Willow.
Yep.
Willow broke the space-time continuum essentially and pulled from parallel universes to get the
Mhm.
answer, which we've talked about shifting on here. It's fucking real. That's
Yeah.
literally it proving that it's real.
Yeah.
Any
Well,
of your astral projection stuff, that's real. Timeline jumping, all that things are real,
yep.
proved by this computer.
The Pentagon inquiries into aliens were talking about how they were from other dimensions, not necessarily
Hmm.
planets, not necessarily. Yeah, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah,
we're really,
interdimensional.
I don't know what that was. There was a very weird energy around that whole thing. So I'm not gonna like put all of my eggs in that basket because I feel like there's stuff there. It's very cloudy when you try to look at it, which means it's usually got some kind of magic on it.
Hmm.
Um, but the accepted existence of
Yeah,
paranormal dimension is there.
yeah.
Mhm.
Very much so. There was another study also done in Antarctica, because there's a certain type of, um, my God, it's a molecule basically,
Mhm.
and they are supposed to be drawn to us basically,
Yeah,
like come towards the planet, and they found a patch just in one spot that are being pushed away, and the only
yeah,
thing they can use to explain it is that it is actually some type of portal slash opening slash something into another reality, like intermixing with ours,
yeah.
which is
Like
wild for
particle
them to get
exchange.
to that spot. But that's like real actual science. That's not just like.
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, there've been some big freaking discoveries.
Speaking of Antarctica, I do want to point out, I want to send a ton of positive and gratitude energy to this individual. Did you see the person who was a believer in the flat Earth theory, who was paid
Mm-hmm.
to go down to Antarctica and test the 24-hour sun thing? Did not
Mm-hmm.
expect it to be a thing because if the Earth is flat, it shouldn't be, right? Um, and then witness a 24-hour sun and was able to very graciously and without anger be like, you know what? Sometimes you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
May we all have that open-mindedness when our
Mm-hmm.
faith and when our judgment is challenged, so that even if we are wrong, we can take another path without guilt and without, pride issues. And if we are
Mm-hmm.
right, we can discover how right we are
Mm-hmm.
and cement our faith
Honestly, it
in that.
was really nice to watch. It was very
Yeah,
refreshing. Because like I've
I
gone
want to
toe
give
to
him a
toe with a
hug.
flat earther on my previous podcast. He sucked. He was so misogynistic and just so like, oh, you just don't know. You just
Hmm.
don't know. We'll be on this podcast and I'll convince you. And by the end, I was not convinced.
Yeah.
So in case you're wondering, he failed. But he thinks he did not fail, which is a wild thing, but whatever.
Hmm.
But it was really nice. Anytime there's a flat earther video, I was like, oh God, what? But this guy was just like, well, no, Earth's round. It's
Yeah.
fine. Like, and just let it go. And I was like, all right then.
I learned something new today, and that's
Hmm.
okay. Yeah, I
Hmm.
wish a lot of us could take things and research them, understand them, and then gracefully accept a different perspective when needed.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
My
kudos
last
to that
thing
guy.
was aliens again, ugh. So,
We still don't know what the drones are, so
um, I do have thoughts on that, by the way. I've actually done
yeah,
a lot of channeling on the drones, etc.
me too.
situation in the last couple days. I will most likely only be sharing those on my Patreon,
Yeah.
so that that is consented to, because that is there's enough stuff going on right now that could send people into spiritual psychosis. You don't need my additional channeling on something that could be very concerning for a lot of people. It's not scary. I don't want you to think it's scary, but it's something that you could talk about that would freak people out, if that makes sense.
Mhm. It's like if you can handle
No one
it,
needs
you're
that.
going to be fine. If
Yeah,
you're feeling like your mental health needs a little nurturing right now and this would tip you over the edge, don't worry about it, kind of stuff.
straight up.
That's how
Yeah.
I am with the astrology right now. Yeah.
hmm That's literally where it, and like, there's a lot of spiritual psychosis inducing things occurring at the moment.
Mhm.
Like, please monitor your mental health. Please ground as necessary. Please breathe through things. Like, even, I mean, Krista knows I've had what, 5 or 6 different proofs at this point that I'm in like a very distinctly different timeline. Like,
Mhm.
I've shifted drastically
Well,
into a different space.
yeah.
Um, and if I was not in a healthy spiritual and mental place, that would be psychosis inducing like a motherfucker. Like it would be
Mhm.
terrifying.
Yeah. That the one today that I also remember with you bugs
hmm
me.
we can tell you guys this one since it's
Yeah,
on
yeah.
topic.
This is not
When we went, we're going to investigate this, by the
Mhm.
way, when we go
When we
back.
go
But when we
back.
went to Egypt in March, we went into the King Tut room. It's a place in the Egyptian Museum. You cannot take pictures in
Mhm.
this room. I took one picture in this room because I was naughty, and it's
Mhm.
not of anything important, but there was a certain pattern on the golden sarcophagi of like on the leg of it, and I loved that pattern so much, and I was like, I really would like to take that and incorporate it into like a sigil or something like that because obviously it's a very
Mhm.
meaningful pattern, and I hadn't seen it anywhere else in the museum. I did not see it the rest of the trip either, so I took a picture of it. I just kind of like sneaky and like
Mhm.
that was it.
Yeah.
But we saw King Tut's mask, all the stuff from inside of his tomb, his sarcophagi, whatever. It is solid gold. Like it's there. So we saw this, physical eye saw this less than a year ago. Now, in this reality, it's different. Um, so King Tut was only from Lower Egypt, right? He was only from Lower Egypt because that's the
I think
Cobra.
so.
Yeah. Um,
I'm questioning all of my history right now because even if
yeah.
I remember it, it could be recorded different at this point.
Yeah, but he's in
Yeah.
the Valley of the King. So he's
He
from
is in
one
the
of the
Valley
other
of Kings.
kingdoms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was
So
down
it
near
was,
Luxor,
yeah.
which is
So it
northern
was
Egypt
before,
or upper
yeah.
Egypt, but southern. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was from Upper Egypt, correct. He's from
Hmm.
Upper Egypt. What
Upper
is the
Egypt.
southern one? My brain was just, yeah. So he's from
Hmm.
Upper Egypt, which is the southern one. It's, we're thinking like pre-pyramids because right, like very old. Um, but it was before the kingdoms were united. It's before there was two. So that would mean there would only be a cobra on his headdress, face mask
Hmm.
situation. Now there's a cobra, the vulture.
Hmm.
That's new. That was not there in March. And I had to like bounce it
Yeah.
off Krista. I bounced it off Weston first. I was like, we just saw this. The fuck?
Hmm.
And he was like, no, it's only a cobra. I was like, no, no, it's not only a cobra anymore. And it looks so unbalanced with the vulture. Like it looks so
Hmm.
I was like, I would have noticed this. Like it's so
Yeah.
distinctive.
The
But
whole silhouette's different.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's damn,
I
it's
keep
not being
wanting
able
to
to take
lift my hands
pictures.
to type into like search something, but then it's like it's not going to matter because if there was a shift, the history will be different anyway. So
I
I
know,
can't validate it, which is
I know,
frustrating. So,
I know. But anyway, we're gonna go look at it, but it's gonna be different. And it's gonna be in a whole different museum too. So that's also gonna be different. Because the new Egyptian museum is open in Cairo, which will be
mhm.
amazing to go see. But yeah, so yeah. Anyway, timelines be shifting very distinctly. And there's other things that I've come up for me. That's both in personal like conversation wise, like in my life, and then also like distinctive changes to things that I don't remember having that.
Mhm.
Um, so all this to say, take care of your mental health, rebalance, stay there.
Mhm.
Yeah, honestly, it is always a really awesome time. Like this last week of the year, even though the year is arbitrary, we know that, but still think about how this year went for you. Think about your highs and your lows. Don't just focus on the lows. That's a big trap. Don't do
Mhm.
that. But think about the spiritual growth that you've had. Go back through your camera roll and be like, oh yeah, and then this, and I learned about this. And like I got introduced to like hot journeys this year, and that was super impactful and important to me. And I, went to different places in a astrological or not astral projection sense
Yeah.
too. And those were really important to me. Like those things are like things that I also want to like remember and like
Mhm.
appreciate. So
Yeah, my
just note
journal
that
is
too.
filled with weird downloads from this year. But I
Hmm
have been, especially over this past weekend, one of the big downloads I've been getting is and I hope that this resonates for everybody. If you're feeling like you're stuck in a mentality of lack and fear and anxiety, start leaning into, like, radically choose and decide that your energy is more focused on what abundance looks like for you, what you want, and what joy looks like for you and what that looks like, and just do it. Even if it's hard right now, do those things, because the more you get your mind shifted back to that, the more you're going to compound that and it's going to surround you. Even though we are living in times that are wonky, you can still
Mhm.
in your little microcosm have these things for you. You can still have what you need in small ways or big ways or whatever. And the more you lean into that energy, it's the where your focus goes, your energy flows, that kind of
Mhm.
thing, has been coming up for me personally a lot. And so if it helps anybody else too, then I hope it does.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. Anyway, we'll still be here. We'll still hang out, but celebrate your year because you made it through. We're here no
Mhm.
matter what. It was the best year of your life. Congrats.
Yeah.
If it was the worst year of your life, congrats, you made it. So
Yeah.
both things we got through, and that's amazing. Yeah. So there's that. And our next episode's gonna be fun, chill, Higa episode as well.
Yeah.
So you can look forward to that as our round out this year, basically. Anyway, take all this energy and one, two, three, go
Go
make some
make some
magic.
magic.
Also, like happy holidays of whatever you're
Yeah.
celebrating.
Whatever
There's
you're
also that.
celebrating, I hope it's awesome.
Yeah.